So Chris, positioning, global, tell me more about this. It sounds complicated.
Yeah, it's an interesting area. I've managed to do quite a varied amount of things in my career so far.
How did you get involved in it?
Well, I actually got involved, I was a student at Lancaster University, hence coming from Northern Ireland, hence the kind of broken up accent, if anyone's wondering. I was looking for a position to work over the summer, and I came across Forsberg Services. At the time, there was 7 members of staff there, and I worked as an engineering assistant. And then joined a company as a project manager after university and worked through. And we provide solutions for anyone really needing to locate something. Okay. So that could be a rubber-tired gantry crane at a container port. It could be for vehicles for testing. But the key differentiator between us and the GPS that you get in phones and trackers and things like that is the precision that we can do it to. Okay. We can get down to sort of centimetre level accuracy, so it's really refined for high accuracy and high precision applications.
Okay. Phil, I'm going to pass over you just for this moment, because I'm going to ask, because you don't run a business, you help businesses and you do that splendidly well, but I'm going to speak to Kate now. And just, Kate, tell us a bit about one of the few things that Like do, because they seem to do so much. I always think of you as keeping the lights on at Heysham. Is that correct?
We do keep the lights on at Heysham. We for Heysham specifically, Heysham Power Station, we look after their control system, and that's from a software point of view, and also from a hardware point of view as well. So we repair and support all the hardware, and also update anything that's required if there's any plant changes at Heysham. We also look after their control desk software.
So this is something that you've said to me in the past, that you look after legacy systems. I love that term, legacy systems. And that's it. Presumably that's because the power station is built 40 years ago, but we don't want it to fail.
That's right.
And you're there to make sure that it doesn't.
That's right, yes. Well, when we talk about legacy systems, systems are constantly changing, and we've talked this morning a bit earlier, that was talked about of all the exciting new things that are coming out. But and from a legacy point of view, it's anything that's not sort of current, if you like, or not maybe 3 stages behind current. Mm-hmm. And in some of the areas that we deal with, we have to ensure that it is extremely safe.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people can see legacy as being a negative, but actually legacy can be very, very much a positive, and it's something that maintains the security, maintains the safety, and ensures that you can't just decide, I want to upgrade my software this week and I'm just going to put a new patch on and let's hope for the best. That doesn't happen with industrial systems, and for very good reasons. So we're specialists in that sort of area. And
is that how come it bleeds into a kind of cybersecurity idea for you as well?
That's right. I mean, we have engineers that are and software engineers that are all experts in safety and security on the systems that we work on, but that then encompasses newer systems as well. So we also look after cyber security. We have to be cyber secure. We have to make sure that our systems are not going to be able to be hacked into. So we have to be good in that kind of area. So we can help other businesses with current software and current platforms to make sure that they're safe.
Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. So we've learned a little bit about the businesses and a little bit about all the stuff that you do. But our talk today is about Eletech, which is a funny old word. And we had a conversation this morning with 3 businesses that was fantastic that unpicked that a little bit. But it's such a big word and it touches on so many things. I wanted to kind of go down the line and ask about Eletech itself specifically, because it is this funny word that we're kind of invoking at the moment. We're trying to understand it and unpick it a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the definition that I gave this morning, which I'm going to read again, and then see how you kind of respond to that definition and see if that kind of fits with your business or fits with your view of what Eletech is. So Innovate UK, and part of Gov UK, there's a blog there, and they, to answer their own question, what is Eletech? They say Eletech is the enabler of all things digital. It is the hardware and embedded software that allows products and processes to communicate, to have power, have intelligence, have situational awareness, be controlled, be automated, be operated safely and even autonomously. So Chris, does that sum up what Eletech is to you, or is Eletech more than that? Is it a decent definition? Do you use that word Eletech in your business? Talk me through Eletech and your kind of response to that word.
Yeah, well, I've started using Electech a lot more now, but it is quite a broad term and it's quite a broad description. But I don't know how you can really be any more sort of focused on that definition. So it's good in that sense. For us, the way I look at it really is if you take anything going on in the world right now, whether it's Internet of Things, if it's applications on your phone, and you actually work your way back through the layers, you have electronics, you have embedded software at the actual, right at the center and the core. And it's understanding that Electech is that core element, and it will bleed into the layers on top of that, and there will be interaction and influences from different layers on the Electech product. But it's, so it is quite a broad term, but that is essentially the nature of
that's
the
nature of the
technology.
beast. Yeah, that's the nature of the beast. So Phil, you and I have worked together recently, kind of thinking about what an Electech cluster might be, what an organisation that would help this set of businesses might be, and we're going to talk about that just a little moment on. But first of all, let's just dwell on the word. And what for you? How do you define that word? How do you kind of mobilise it when you're speaking to folk?
Well, I would think similar to what's just been said, but it is that kind of hardware behind a lot of the electronic devices we're communicating on. It's things like circuit boards, transducers, transistors, LEDs, this kind of thing that really make those things work. So from Innovate UK's perspective, we're looking at companies that might be working in that sector and how can we bring them together to benefit and grow, but also cluster together. So it's really those kind of companies working in that electronics kind of hardware sector.
Perfect. And Kate, do you want to just open it up as well? Because I know you think there's some specifics that kind of definition, if not misses, but kind of glosses over, doesn't open up in the way that you would want to open it up.
I think it's a good definition because it is wide, and I think that's the whole point of it. It is wide. But I think there's been a lot of focus on front end coding, software applications, user interfaces, whatever we want to call it. There's been lots and lots of government focus on that. There's been lots of educational focus on that. But then there's a whole host of things that go on behind the scenes of user interface. And I think that it being wide is a good thing because there's a whole host of things that are going on. So I think that it naturally brings in lots of people. So would I use Electech as something in my business of saying this is what we are? Probably not. But it's a new term, and I think that now I certainly would because I'm part of an Electech cluster. But I think it's something to just open up people's minds to. There is something else behind that user interface, or there's something else behind. It's not just about an app.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole host of things that go on behind it.
Yeah, and I think that's what is so interesting about the sector, and it's what underlies stuff, what gets beneath stuff that's what interests me about the sector, because you do so much, as you say, so much emphasis recently has been on the fluffy stuff at the front. But how's it working? How's it really working? And I think actually that's really fascinating. And I think if we can turn young people onto that, they'll see that this is a fascinating thing to be involved in. In our early conversation, we talk about that skills pipeline. How do we get people interested in this? How do we get people through that skills pipeline? And one of the ways that we've responded to that as businesses locally is with Rich Grant at Milliamp and your own businesses, set up Tech Lancaster, which is a great way to kind of, do some electronic skills training for people and take them through that pipeline. But it's not the only thing that businesses are doing. It's not the only thing that businesses can do. So the three of us have been in a conversation about an Electech cluster. So Chris, I wanted to come to you first and sort of say, why do you think clustering together or some kind of organisation or some kind of collective voice, why do you think it's needed? And then we're going to open the conversation on to what that might do. But first of all, let's think about, why is it needed? Why do we need a kind of collective voice?
Yeah, so well, it was quite interesting really because the cluster concept started about really because kind of similar company size, and we all had a common purpose that we saw the need to recruit the right people, attract talent, innovate, come up with new ideas, collaborate on technology, and ultimately, all of us want to see the region succeed, and we want to see benefits coming into this area. So it started to. What actually happened was a lot of us were having those ideas in isolation, and then when we started talking about it, we realised that coming together, having that common purpose, and being able to bounce ideas and talk about our the objectives and how we could achieve them together, started to form this concept of the cluster, and then how it could be delivered. And there's all sorts of benefits to clusters. There's if you want to go into the academic papers, you can read lots of different papers. But for me, it's a lot about understanding, being aware of what actually is going on in the area, what companies are out there, what business support. So talking to Phil really about business support that there is available.
Because a lot of businesses don't know.
Yeah, you don't know, and then access to the universities, not just Lancaster University, but the other universities. I've received a lot of support from the university into the business around innovation, and then being able to recruit graduates from the university. But we've also, as Forsberg, given a lot back in terms of industrial sort of and commercial outlook to help steer research.
I really want to dig into the university stuff in a minute because I think it's so important. But I'm going to go over to Phil now and just say to Phil, how do you see this cluster? You've been involved, you've helped the cluster kind of on its still early stages, very early stages for the cluster, but you've been part of the journey for the past 6 months that we've been talking about this. So tell us why you're involved and why you think it's important and what you think it might deliver.
Yeah, I think it is important, Mark, and I became aware of this grouping that had come together as a small cluster to deliver the tech skills towards the end of last year in the autumn. And it became evident there was an opportunity here, and there was a kind of small critical mass that were really developing something exciting in Eletech. And it became evident that as a group of businesses, it was going to be challenging for them to do everything on their own, engaging with the universities and with the funders and with the business support and everything. So I feel that I'd be like a sort of facilitator and coordinator that's linking between the businesses and the SMEs. It's like Kate and Chris here who are leading the cluster, but being able to facilitate what might come behind it and add value to it and develop things like a research and development strategy and things. So we're able to bring in people like Northwest Business Leaders team, both our local universities in Lancaster and the University of Cumbria, in various sectors of expertise they've got, the local enterprise partnerships, Lancashire and Cumbria, the town councils that sit around Morecambe Bay as a whole, and then Innovate UK and ourselves. And I think that's where the collaboration across that.
And Phil, just unpick this kind of notion of a cluster for me a bit. Why do Innovate UK like clusters? Why does kind of UK government or UK PLC like clusters? What do clusters do?
Well, clusters really focus on an area of expertise in a region. And we've got kind of technology and sector groupings around the region. So many of those, but while to a degree they can be seen as innovation clusters, they're sometimes too broad or too big. For example, if we look right across the northwest, well, that's too big really to be a cluster. But it's the sectors in clean tech, or energy, or hydrogen, or aerospace, they all exist. Really, this is drilling down into a smaller region that's really got a focus of as I said, a critical mass of these companies that really have an ability to come together and grow. And for example, there's a procurement possibility of coming together as part of a supply chain to access bigger funding and bigger opportunities. For example, we know that BAE Systems in their nuclear submarines, there's over 13,000 different electronic and electrical components in a single sub. So that's a huge supply chain opportunity. Mm-hmm. So by coming together and grouping, they've got a bigger voice. And it's important that we get the cluster managers. So, we're working together to get a cluster manager. So there's like a front door on that. so that when business and industry come to them, they're not coming to the single business talking to Kate or Chris and others. They've got the opportunity to speak to the whole voice, and there's obviously huge benefits we see for those businesses.
Yeah.
At the same time,
because of
that, at the same time, they can get our business support programs. These are all free of charge to SMEs. We can support them in their growth and make sure they're growing as individuals and as a group.
Perfect.
And that's great for UK PLC.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kate, unpick that a little bit from Like Technology's point of view. You've been involved in this conversation about clusters. So tell us why that was interesting to you, why you got involved, but also why you think it's good for Like Technologies as a business to be involved.
I think there is a number of reasons. Some that have already manifested themselves, in terms of just having contact with other businesses that have the same issues as you, and that you can actually, of leading businesses, you can actually say, I'm having trouble with this, oh yes, so am I, all right, okay, or I did, but I got over it by doing that. Just those small points of that kind of peer-to-peer working, of actually being able to say, well, if we did that together, we might be able to get over that, or don't worry about that because I've already done it. You can have it. Here's how I did it. So that's one thing from Like Technology's point of view. And that then sort of moves into the university's area of what you can do with the university. I've done work with the university as part of Eletech. I've taken placements for their engineering students into my workshop and looked at how we can help them get some real good practical experience. But then I start talking to other businesses like Forsberg, and Chris says, well, actually, with the university, I've done this, and this. Actually, that would really help my business. I couldn't do all of them. I couldn't do them in the same way. But who did you talk to? Because I've been to the university and asked them for this, but I didn't quite know who to go to, or I've not been to the University of Cumbria. Should I be going to the University of Cumbria, etc., etc. So as an individual business, it's quite difficult to be running around outside trying to get support in different areas.
Themselves, the university sector is complicated. It's a
complex
thing to navigate.
But they have
there's goodness, but you can't quite get to it.
Absolutely, but they have lots of people in the university wanting to help SMEs, and they're very, very keen to do that. And then once you're tapped in there, then that's great.
Yeah, once you've found the right.
But how many other businesses aren't tapped into that person, people, department? So I think that's where we will benefit. But as Phil just said, supply chain is also a big thing, I think, for me as a business. We are looking to supply bigger businesses with the sort of work that we do, and there is lots of policy out there about giving SMEs a chance in supply chains, making sure you've got frameworks specifically for SMEs. But it's difficult to get on those frameworks, and it's a lot of work. But as a body, as a collective voice, as a number of businesses coming together to say, actually, this is what we can provide from the Morecambe Bay area, this is what we've got, this is what we can do in your supply chain, that's a far more powerful.
So you imagine this cluster as a kind of a knowledge base for your business and a collective voice for them. Because I know we've talked a bit about, is it a trade body? Is that what a cluster is? Or is it something else? We're not quite sure actually how to define it. This is part of our journey, how to define it. But what's key for me in what you've said there is that what you and your businesses do is just brilliant. You know exactly how to keep the lights on in Heysham, but getting those bigger contracts, getting involved in bigger supply chain, navigating the complexity of the universities in plural, navigating even kind of finding out how you get money from KTPs or Innovate or any of that stuff. That's difficult for businesses, and a cluster organisation that could work with you and hold that knowledge together so it could then share it to other businesses. That's key for us.
I think it comes down to it's like the acceleration, isn't it? That's part of around the opportunistic and awareness building of what other businesses are doing, and knowing that an opportunity presents itself, you don't have to start from scratch because there's others around you that may have navigated that in one way or another way. You're not looking at like a blank piece of paper going, how am I going to get going with this? You've got a peer network around.
And you've been a transmission belt for loads of that for people because of your relationship with the university, if we can go back to that, because University of Lancaster we're talking about specifically, but we should say, of course, that we do have a number of local kind of, educational institutions that are all fabulous. The University of Cumbria does great work, but the University of Lancaster in Lancaster is kind of that kind of golden city on the hill, but it's complicated to navigate. As Kate says, there's lots of people there wanting to reach out to business, but it's sometimes both sides kind of somehow miss one another, but you've been your past master working the university. So tell us a little bit about that and why it's been so useful to your business.
Yeah, so I think I've described this to you before, but I think my technique was like a rhino just charging down at doors until I found the right person to speak to. And it is quite a difficult institute to navigate, and I think this is across all of the institutes. They're all,
and I think the university would say so themselves.
But once you do find the right people and the right resource, and they start making connections, and that's really what happened with me. And then I started to speak to different professors and other the business engagement teams, and it's amazing the amount of resource that's up there that you can tap into. And some of the research is going on that's specifically in our area that I wasn't aware of before. Suddenly opened up new ideas for the business. We set up student projects, we hired graduates, we've gone through 6 internships, bringing people into the business, not only on our primary objective around position, navigation, timing, but also the inner workings of the company and in how to run our stores more efficiently, digitalizing our systems around ERPs and enterprise resource planning tools. But it's just, you've got to know where the right person is. And this is one of the visions for the cluster, is to break down those barriers after I've kind of run into them a few times. But so that it's easier for businesses to approach. And
I think so that we hold that knowledge so that you've forged that pathway, but the next business doesn't have to go through the same pain, and the next business doesn't have to. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time.
No, exactly.
You can hold that as knowledge through and share it through the cluster.
Yeah, and that's sort of the Forsberg part that's been brought in. But then likewise, there's other businesses I've been spoken to, completely opened my eyes to access the business support, and then talking to Phil, different ways to access business support, other ways to finance research that's down at the very low TRL levels to develop it. There's all sorts of different areas.
So Phil, from your point of view, you can see obviously this from a slightly different angle to the businesses, but you see the value in the cluster. Why? What do you think the cluster will bring these member businesses?
I think because there are many partners and stakeholders in the cluster, and Chris has just mentioned the university, as has Kate, but it's like the management school and the business school of both the local universities, and they're developing something called the Innovation Catalyst, and I think using models like that helps us develop things like the research and development and innovation strategy going forward. So it's really important we have those people plugged in, and they're really engaged with us now. So I think part of my role as well is help facilitating that through past experience of working within the university and industry sectors. You can pull these things together. So I think that's a really important part, but also the investment side of it. So things like Northwest Business Leaders team is very important. We've got their innovation investment director plugged in, listening to what we're doing here, wants to get involved. So getting some of these companies might be investment ready, pitching to investors, angel investors, whatever they might need. And as they've said, by being part of this cluster, they can benefit. There's some fast track learning. So a company coming in, and that's the huge value of being a member of this cluster, is that you're not having to learn and do everything yourself. You're part of a trusted network, effectively, that we can really benefit, have a spotlight in the Lancaster and Morecambe Bay area, and then hopefully it will really grow and take off.
Brilliant. Kate, tell me a little bit about this area for you and the business as well. The Array Festival is about Lancaster, about innovation in Lancaster. We've got a great university sector who's helping the businesses, a cluster now developing to try and get access to all that help, which is difficult to navigate, but if we can find it, it will really help our businesses. But tell us about and being in Lancaster, about being in the region.
I think it's a really interesting region because there's so much activity, there's so much excitement going on in this area. But in some ways, it's in little pockets sometimes.
Because you're out in Halton.
We're out in Halton, yes.
Which for
I
those
like
people
to
who
think
are not
is still
in Lancaster,
Lancaster.
isn't very far.
But it's but we're in Lancaster. But there's lots of excitement going on, and I think that's the good thing of being involved with other businesses and other organisations in the area is that you actually start finding lots of things that you never knew actually existed. And I think there are a lot of businesses in this area that we just don't know exist. And I think that they could really benefit from being part of a collective. And I think that we have got something to offer. And certainly from a Light Technologies point of view, you know, we're very much part of the community. We deliver around the UK. But specifically, we deliver to Heysham. And so we're very much part of this Lancaster Heysham community, but there are lots of others around here as well that, you know, we really want to hear more from and learn from.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to close down the conversation now. Thank you so much. But I just want to go down the line really and just ask you for your closing comments. But also one thing that we've not dwelt on here is just, you know, it's been a really challenging year, you know, that we've just kind of gone through. But what are the kind of the lights on the horizon? What's the exciting stuff ahead for Forsberg, Chris? For you first.
Yeah, challenging to say the least, I think. But one of the benefits of the Forsberg model is we're active in a number of different markets, and we were able to navigate last year by really picking on the markets that were not slowing down because of the COVID impact, and really focused on those markets and move into those areas. And the exciting things for the company now is how much they've grown, and we've been able to recruit off the back of that. We've got a lot of exciting new technology that have been developed in that.
Because you've grown through COVID as a business.
Yeah, we've gone from 31 members of staff to 44 members of staff.
Which is fantastic.
And to pursue different opportunities, and now it's sort of taking that to the next level. But I think.
And you think the cluster will help with that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, very very much so. In the supporting, it's hard scaling up a business, no matter what the size. Scaling up is a challenge, and you're constantly coming across things that you didn't even know existed. That come out of the blue, and this is where some of that peer networking, having resourced research, having business support is just huge for the business, and being able to sort of make the most of that and build on it.
Brilliant. And Phil, how does the next year look, both for kind of Innovate UK and then for how it can help with the cluster and local businesses?
Yeah, well, there's a new CEO of Innovate UK who just literally came in 2 weeks ago. Very heavily linked to the skills into the electronic sector, so that's good for this industry. And I think our business programs are continuing with the SMEs going forward, so that's going to be good. I think the fact that we are hopefully moving out of COVID means that we can do more face-to-face meetings. So I think looking at what tech businesses are developing is really useful for us as innovation and growth specialists, because sometimes we're seeing it on the end of a camera. There could be a poor connection, and it's difficult to really get a grasp of that. So I think having those opportunities will help some of these companies grow faster.
Brilliant. And if the cluster succeeds, what do you think it will bring to the regional businesses?
Well, I think it's going to help bring more growth and opportunities, as Chris has outlined how his business has grown, and I think we'll get more high net worth jobs coming to the area. We'll see more businesses spinning out of perhaps the university, or just setting up what want to see the value of this cluster growing. And as they said, we haven't found all the companies that are out there. Not every company applies for Innovate UK funding, for example. We want to tease those out and bring them in, and through the cluster help them apply for that kind of funding. So it's really a collective and a collaboration for the whole area, and it should really, as I said before, spotlight the whole Morecambe Bay area.
Perfect. And Kate, what does 2021, 2022 and beyond look like for your business?
Well, our business has been busy last year throughout, like as Chris's has, and it will remain to keep going. We've got to keep those lights on, as you as you say. But we also want to grow. We want to look at new sectors, particularly for our electronics design and refurbishment. We want to look at different areas, and this is where, for me, the cluster will help me to look at funding from Innovate UK and look at where we can go next in that area. And then also from a cybersecurity services point of view, we will kickstart that again, and that's the area that will start to be moving within the next couple of years.
Perfect. Well, look, I want to thank you all for that conversation. It was brilliant. Thank you for all of your input. Thank you, ICS Accounting, for sponsoring the event. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully you've learned a little bit more about what Eletech is, and keep an eye on the cluster. Follow them on LinkedIn. Follow us, I should say, because I'm part of it. So follow us on LinkedIn, and thank you again for today. It's been brilliant. Thank you for your time.